Vocabulary highlighted in the book The Zurich Axioms by Gunther, Max. 1. We are plagued by many behavioral biases that wreak havoc with our investment results. An ability to become aware of them, and then take action to mitigate them, is invaluable. 2. The very first pages were a revelation to me. Gunther bluntly said that to use any of the rules of the book effectively, you had to be willing to bet. 3. The author rather pugnaciously speculated that many, even most, people want to win without betting. 4. I've always thought that one of our most limiting factors as human beings is that we are deterministic thinkers trying to succeed in a probabilistic world. 5. So right out of the gate, the author puts that on the table: if you take no risk, you get no reward. 6. If you're not worried, you are not risking enough. But then the author cleverly extends the idea beyond investing. If you're afraid of risk, you'll never fall in love, you'll never have life-changing experiences, and you'll likely lead a sad, dull life. By extension, if you want to do well investing. 7. He quotes economist Dr. Theodore Levitt: you make 25 predictions, and the ones that come true are the ones you talk about. 8. It's part of our nature to desire knowledge of the future because it helps us maintain our illusion of control. 9. We continue to take predictions seriously. We continue to be disappointed. 10. Virtually every risk-based equity market has had vastly higher returns than the alternatives. 11. If you want to do well over time, you must place a bet and put capital at risk. 12. I call myself a pragmatic optimist, meaning that my general outlook is optimistic, but that doesn't stop me from thinking about what could go wrong and what actions I will take if it does. 13. Because when things aren't going your way, you're highly likely to get emotional, and when the emotional part of your mind takes over, it blots out all your former well-thought-out plans and puts the lizard brain in full control. 14. As the cartoon character Pogo famously said, we've met the enemy and it's us. 15. Develop a plan and stick to it. It's that simple. 16. Not getting caught in highly specific goals, but rather focusing more intently on a flexible process that can move with events is the key. 17. They warn against irrational optimism and a reluctance to learn from mistakes. Successful investors unbind themselves from the moment, letting the past, present, and future make up their now. 18. It has stayed out of European wars for 300 years, chiefly because, in all that time, there has never been an invader who really wanted it. 19. Yet the Swiss are among the most affluent people in the world. 20. They do it by being the world's cleverest investors, speculators, and gamblers. 21. Everybody wants to win, of course. But not everybody wants to bet, and therein lies a difference of the greatest magnitude. 22. Many people, probably most, want to win without betting. 23. But if you do not mind taking reasonable risks, or better, if you enjoy risk, as the Swiss do, then this book is for you. 24. But the book is not limited to that great supermarket of dreams. 25. All of life is a gamble, as every adult knows. Many people, probably most, are unhappy with this fact and spend their lives figuring out how to place as few bets as possible. 26. The Swiss did not become the world's bankers by sitting in dark rooms chewing their fingernails. They did it by facing risk head-on and figuring out how to manage it. 27. Define as gain, you must place some of your material and/or emotional capital at risk. 28. There are no appeals. It is the law. 29. The Swiss, observing all this, conclude that the sensible way to conduct one's life is not to shun risk, but to expose oneself to it deliberately. To join the game, to bet. 30. To bet, instead, with care and thought. To bet in such a way that large gains are more likely than large losses. 31. This formula or philosophy consists of 12 profound and mysterious rules of risk-taking called the Zurich axioms. 32. Indeed, they contradict some of the most cherished clichés of the investment advice business. 33. The most successful Swiss speculators pay scant attention to conventional investment advice. They have a better way. 34. They talked about many things, but mainly about risk. 35. He once told me that what he really wanted engraved on his tombstone was this sentence: he gambled and won. 36. They don't teach you the thing you need most of all, he would say. Speculation. How to take risks and win. A boy growing up in America without knowing how to speculate, why, that's like being in a gold mine without a shovel. 37. People never get rich on salaries, and a lot of people get poor on them. You've got to have something else going for you. A couple of good speculations, that's what you need. 38. I took Frank Henry's advice and shunned savings institutions, which he regarded with the greatest scorn. 39. What he had in his head, it turned out, were rules of speculative play that he had absorbed over a lifetime. 40. They forced each other to articulate the thinking that guided them. 41. As far as anybody knows, they are now in their final form, 12 major axioms and 16 minor axioms. 42. Their value seems to me incalculable. They grow bigger each time I study them, a sure sign of fundamental verity. They are rich in secondary and tertiary layers of meaning, some coldly pragmatic, some verging on the mystical. They are not just a philosophy of speculation, they are guideposts for successful living. 43. Worry is not a sickness, but a sign of health. If you are not worried, you are not risking enough. 44. His book, The Battle for Investment Survival, may have been the most popular market strategy handbook of all time. 45. But it quickly became apparent to him that each of them already had her mind made up. All they wanted from him was confirmation. 46. Mary had a bloody nose. She had taken a beating in a stormy market. The value of her stocks had declined about 25% since she had bought them. 47. Sylvia was generous enough not to crow. 48. They all expect to be big winners instantly, he would say mournfully. When they don't triple their money the very first year, they go off pouting like spoiled kids. 49. It is the central assumption of modern psychology that mental health means, above all, being calm. 50. The theory is that the less you own, the less you will have to worry about. The philosophy behind the Zurich axioms is, of course, the exact opposite. 51. But any good Swiss speculator will tell you that if your main goal in life is to escape worry, you are going to stay poor. 52. Life ought to be an adventure, not a vegetation. An adventure may be defined as an episode in which you face some kind of jeopardy and try to overcome it. While facing the jeopardy, your natural and healthy response is going to be a state of worry. 53. Sigmund Freud understood the need for adventure. 54. Adventure is what makes life worth living, and the way to have an adventure is to expose yourself to risk. 55. That $9 of interest is taxable as income. What's left after taxes will keep you even with inflation, perhaps. You won't make any appreciable change in your financial status that way. 56. Nor are you ever going to get rich on salary or wage income. It is impossible. The economic structure of the world is rigged against you. 57. Do your homework or you won't get a good job. Getting a good job, that's supposed to be the high point of anybody's ambitions. But what about a good speculation? Why don't they talk to kids about that? 58. Frank Henry's rule of thumb was that only half of one's financial energies should be devoted to job income. The other half ought to go into investment and speculation. 59. The only way you are ever going to lift yourself above the great unrich, absolutely the only hope you have, is to take a risk. 60. As an ordinary tax-hounded, inflation-rattled income earner, carrying much of the rest of the world on your back. 61. With the potential gain so much bigger than the potential loss, the game is rigged in your favor. 62. She went back to work in a brokerage after her divorce and must continue to work until she becomes eligible for a pension in her 60s. 63. She took risks. After a painful start, she began to see some of the risks paying off. 64. As she explained to Gerald Loeb, job income had become a minor element in her financial picture. Her yearly take-in stock dividends alone was more than her salary. 65. Many of Wall Street's most celebrated plungers have said publicly that a state of almost constant worry is a part of their way of life. 66. A tall, handsome man with startling light blonde hair, Livermore drew crowds wherever he went. People were always asking him for investment advice, and he was continually hounded by newspaper and magazine reporters trying to pry bits of quotable wisdom out of him. 67. Well, now, kid, I'll tell you, Livermore said. Every occupation has its aches and pains. If you keep bees, you get stung. Me, I get worried. It's either that or stay poor. If I've got a choice between worried and poor, I'll take worried any time. 68. True, there are times when you get that shuddery feeling, but such times come rarely and don't usually last long. Most of the time you will be worried only enough to make life spicy. 69. If a bank collapsed with your money stuck inside it, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, would reimburse you, but only after a long delay and with no interest. If dozens of banks were to turn belly up all at once in some nationwide economic catastrophe, then not even the FDIC would be able. 70. A bank account is as close to riskless as any investment you are ever going to find in this chancy world. 71. Precisely because the risk is low, however, the return is low. 72. They aren't taking risks. They aren't speculating, they aren't, whisper the dreaded word. Gambling? No, they're investing. 73. We students of the Zurich axioms frankly call ourselves speculators. 74. All investment is speculation. The only difference is that some people admit it and some don't. 75. People who offer to counsel you in money management almost always call themselves investment advisors, not speculation advisors. It sounds more serious and impressive that way, and also makes for higher fees. 76. But they are all dealing with speculation just as the Zurich axioms do. They just don't like to say it. 77. Sure. If you'd bought IBM at its peak price in 1973, when nearly every advisor in the world was touting it, you'd have had to wait 9 years to get your money back. You would have been better off keeping your money in a sock. 78. Calling it an investment doesn't change the facts. A gamble is still a gamble. 79. All investment is speculation, as Loeb said. You put up your money and you take your chances. 80. You understand the world better when you come to it with your eyes wide open. 81. The Zurich axioms are about speculation and say they are. It doesn't mean they are about goofy chance taking. It means only that they are frank. 82. Only bet what you can afford to lose, says the old bromide. You hear it in Las Vegas, on Wall Street, and wherever people risk money to get more money. 83. As most people interpret it, it is a formula that almost assures poor results. 84. But consider this. If you bet $100 and double your money, you're still poor. 85. The only way to beat the system is to play for meaningful stakes. This doesn't mean you should bet amounts whose loss would bankrupt you. you've got to pay the rent and feed the kids, after all. But it does mean you must get over the fear of being hurt. 86. If an amount is so small that its loss won't make any significant difference, then it isn't likely to bring you any significant gains either. 87. Every speculator finds his or her own level of tolerable risk. 88. The most valuable thing he received from his father was not money but instruction. 89. Always play for meaningful stakes. 90. 500. Nearly his entire wad. 91. Minor axiom 2. Resist the allure of diversification. 92. As used in the investment community, it means spreading your money around. Spreading it thin. Putting it into a lot of little speculations instead of a few big ones. 93. Or so they like to tell you. The fact is that diversification, while reducing your risks, reduces by the same degree any hope you may have of getting rich. 94. Most of us middle-class plungers, at the start of our speculative adventures, have only a limited amount of capital to play with. 95. Makes you feel safe, doesn't it? Safe from just about everything, including the danger of getting wealthy. 96. It forces you to violate the precept of minor axiom 1, that you should always play for meaningful stakes. 97. If your entire starting capital is itself not very meaningful, diversifying is only going to make things worse. 98. By diversifying, you create a situation in which gains and losses are likely to cancel each other out. 99. Interest rates are soaring because of business and consumer loan demand, so the value of your fixed interest stock is sagging. 100. So you have gained $400 on Hoo Boy and Hey Wow, but lost $400 on your fixed interest stock and gold. The whole exercise has been a waste of time and effort. What's the use? 101. By diversifying, you become a juggler trying to keep too many balls in the air all at once. 102. If you have just a few speculations going and one or two turn sour, you can take defensive action. 103. The more speculations you get into, the more time and study they will require. 104. What often happens to people in this kind of pickle, especially novice speculators, is that they become paralyzed. 105. They can only stand and gape, stunned, as their wealth dwindles away. 106. A little diversity probably won't do any harm. 107. My personal rule of thumb is to have no more than 4 going at any one time, and most often I keep the number to 3 or less, sometimes just 1. 108. But don't diversify just for the sake of diversity. 109. In speculation, you should put your money into ventures that genuinely attract you, and only those. 110. Never buy something simply because you think you need it to round out a diversified portfolio. 111. As some say around Wall Street, put all your eggs in one basket, and then watch the basket. This is one old financial bromide that stands scrutiny. 112. It says put your money at risk. Don't be afraid of getting hurt a little. 113. The price you pay for this glorious chance is a state of worry. But this worry, the first axiom insists, is not the sickness modern psychology believes it to be. It is the hot and tart sauce of life. Once you get used to it, you enjoy it. 114. Always take your profit too soon. Amateurs on Wall Street do it. Amateurs in poker games do it. Amateurs everywhere do it. They stay too long and lose. 115. Greed is built into the human psyche. 116. A more pragmatic and promising course would be to think about the rich, strange paradox that lies at the heart of the second axiom. By reducing your greed, you improve your chances of getting rich. 117. Greed, in the context of the second axiom, means excessive acquisitiveness, wanting more, always more. It means wanting more than you came in for or more than you have a right to expect. It means losing control of your desire. 118. Don't be ashamed of being an acquirer. The trait is part of your survival equipment. 119. That is greed. Fear and hate it. It is a speculator's enemy. 120. If they wanted less, they'd go home with more, he would say. That was his own axiom on greed. 121. This story illustrates the original meaning of the popular admonition, don't push your luck, or, as the Swiss more often put it, don't stretch your luck. 122. And so you will ride, and in the end you and your money will go over the falls. 123. The axioms are intricately interwoven. It is hardly possible to talk about one without mentioning others. 124. What should you do, then? You should assume that any set or series of events producing a gain for you will be of short duration, and that your profit, therefore, won't be extravagantly big. 125. But from where you stand at the beginning of the set, needing to make a sit or quit decision without being able to see the future, you are much better off playing the averages. The averages overwhelmingly favor quitting early. 126. Always bet on the short and modest. Don't let greed get you. When you have a good profit, cash out and walk away. 127. Once in a while you will regret having walked away. The winning set will continue without you, and you will be left morosely counting all the money you didn't make. 128. In the long run, you make more money when you control your greed. 129. Don't ever try to squeeze the last possible dollar from a set. It seldom works. 130. Don't fear regret. Since you can't see the peak, you must assume it is close rather than far. Take your profit and get out. 131. Sure, when the fog clears and the sun comes up, you may find you're less than halfway to the top. You could have climbed a lot farther. But don't nurse this regret. You aren't all the way up, but you are up. You've made a solid gain. 132. As happens much more often than not, the peak was far closer than they wanted to believe. 133. In a whole year on the market, Alice and Harry received just one offer from a buyer. The amount offered was shockingly low. It was more than they had paid for the house, but not by much. They would have earned more by keeping their capital in a savings account. 134. They were determined, in other words, to sell too soon. I hope they stick with that decision. 135. Carrying out the precept of the second axiom seems to be extraordinarily difficult for some. The main difficulty may be the fear of regret. 136. Never check the price of a stock you've sold, says one of Wall Street's ancient teachings. 137. I promised you that I wouldn't minimize the pain of possible regret, and I won't. It can indeed hurt. I have no medicines to offer. There is no analgesic for this pain. It is simply something every speculator must put up with. 138. A month or a year after you've cashed out, you can, if you wish, torment yourself by looking to see if the winning set continued without you. 139. This threw him into a frenzy of rage and regret. It got so bad that he became afraid to sell anything. 140. Minor axiom 3. Decide in advance what gain you want from a venture, and when you get it, get out. 141. The problem afflicts almost everybody in time. There is only the most remote chance that you are immune. You must learn to deal with the problem when it hits you. 142. Once in a great while, a stock market venture of yours might end when a company in which you've invested is absorbed by a bigger company and passes out of existence. But most of the time you will be required to call your own endings. 143. But how do you arrive at such a clearly seen stopping place in a world where there are no finish line tapes, no end of the round bells? 144. You are required to do that yourself, you alone. The race ends when you say it ends. 145. Minor axiom 3 tells you how to arrive at this ending. Decide where the finish line is before you start the race. 146. That is the finish line. Keep it in sight all the way through the race. And when you get there, quit. 147. But such situations are rare. Most of the time, arrival at an ending position should signal just one thing: it's over. 148. One excellent way to reinforce the ending feeling is to rig up some kind of reward for yourself. 149. The ending thus becomes associated with an actual event, something concrete to look forward to. 150. If it works for you, treasure it. 151. Loeb was possibly the first counselor to say publicly, without apparent shame, that an investor/speculator should spend some of his or her winnings. 152. For this reason, I would advise you to keep your speculative capital in some easily accessible form if you can. 153. It's a perfect setup for celebrating ending positions. When I hit such a position, my wife and my Visa card and I go off for a weekend of sinful luxury in New York. 154. Now let's see just what the second axiom advises you to do. It says, sell too soon. Don't wait for booms to reach their peaks. Don't hope for winning streaks to go on and on. Don't stretch your luck. Expect winning streaks to be short. When you reach a previously decided upon ending position, cash out. 155. Except in such unusual circumstances, get in the habit of selling too soon. And when you've sold, don't torment yourself if the winning set continues without you. 156. The third major axiom, on hope when the ship starts to sink, don't pray. Jump. 157. The second axiom was all about what to do when things are going right. The third axiom is about saving yourself when they go wrong. 158. You can expect that roughly half your speculative ventures will turn sour before you have reached your pre-planned ending positions. 159. But cheer up. This doesn't mean you are bound to lose $1 for every dollar you gain. If that were true, the whole adventure would be pointless. It is true only of the inept. Successful gamblers and speculators handle things better. They forge ahead in large measure because they know what to do. 160. Asked how he achieved such nice results, Schwartz focused instantly on the one ability he felt to be essential. I'll tell you how I became a winner, he told the New York Times. I learned how to lose. 161. Asked what makes a good poker player, Sherlock Feldman answered without hesitating, knowing when to fold. 162. Getting stuck in a losing venture is the worst money pain there is, says Susan. 163. She is successful now, but she wasn't always. It took her time to learn the techniques, particularly to learn how to lose. 164. When the ship starts to sink, jump. 165. Note the wording, when it starts to sink. Don't wait until it is half submerged. Don't hope, don't pray. Don't cover your eyes and stand there trembling. Look around at what's happening. Study the situation. Ask yourself whether the developing problem is likely to get fixed. 166. Gerald Loeb's rule of thumb was that you should sell whenever a stock's price has retreated 10 to 15% from the highest price at which you have held it, regardless of whether you then have a gain or a loss. 167. In all cases, the idea is to cut losses early. You take small losses to protect yourself from big ones. 168. You're down 15% from that level, so the rules say you probably ought to sell. As long as you see no good evidence that some kind of improvement is in the works, get out. 169. The first obstacle is the fear of regret, substantially the same fear we looked at under the second axiom. In this case, what you fear is that a loser will turn into a winner after you've gone away. 170. But such sudden reversals of fortune do not happen often. More frequently, a situation that goes bad will stay bad, at least for a while. The problems that cause significant price drops in speculative entities, stocks, commodities, real estate, tend to be long-lived problems. 171. More often than not, the correct course is to bail out when a price first develops an appreciable sag. 172. The second obstacle to implementation of the third axiom is the need to abandon part of an investment. This is inordinately painful to some. To console you, however, I can tell you that it gets less painful with practice. 173. It hurts some so much that they cannot do it. The instinct of the typical small-time speculator is to sit tight, hoping to get that $1,000 back someday. If you don't conquer that instinct, you may remain a small-time speculator, or become a bankrupt one. 174. Poker is designed to test some elements of human character to their very limits. You have much to learn from the game, about speculation and about yourself. 175. This isn't an ordinary cash basis speculation, however. This is poker. If you stay, you pay. 176. The third obstacle to the third axiom's implementation is the difficulty of admitting you were wrong. 177. You make an investment, it turns sour, you know you ought to get out. But in order to do that, you must admit you made a mistake. You must admit it to your broker or banker or whomever you've been dealing with, maybe to your spouse and other family members, and, usually worst of all, to yourself. 178. Minor Axiom 4. Accept small losses cheerfully as a fact of life. Expect to experience several while awaiting a large gain. 179. The only way you can get caught in a market crash is to get taken by surprise and then to find you can't sell when you want to. 180. Get in the habit of taking small losses. If a venture doesn't work out, walk away and try something else. Don't sit on a sinking ship. Don't get trapped. 181. If you wait for sagging ventures to improve, you are doomed to frequent disappointment, and doomed, too, to remain unrich. 182. The most productive attitude, admittedly not an easy one to achieve, is to expect small losses the way you expect any other less than pleasant fact of financial life. The way you expect taxes, for instance, or electric bills. 183. Some speculators prepare for small losses in advance through use of stop-loss orders. A stop-loss order is a standing instruction to your broker. If the stock which you have bought at $100 ever falls to $90, or any other level you designate, he is to sell you out automatically. Some find stop-loss orders. 184. The disadvantage is that a stop-loss order robs you of flexibility. There are some situations in which you might think it sensible to dump that stock at $90, but others in which it might make more sense to hold to $85. With a stop-loss order on the books, you tend to stop thinking. 185. The third axiom tells you not to wait around when trouble shows itself. It tells you to get away promptly. 186. Don't hope, don't pray. Hope and prayer are nice, no doubt, but they are not useful as tools of a speculative operation. 187. The third axiom says only that learning to take losses is an essential speculative technique. The fact that most men and women fail to learn the technique is one of the key reasons why most are not good speculators or gamblers. 188. The fourth major axiom, on forecasts human behavior, cannot be predicted. Distrust anyone who claims to know the future, however dimly. 189. It makes you wonder. Why do we go on listening to economic prophets when they plainly know no more about the future than you or I? 190. More often than not, listening turns out to be a mistake. 191. The fact is, nobody has the faintest idea of what is going to happen next year, next week, or even tomorrow. 192. It is of the utmost importance that you never take economists, market advisors, or other financial oracles seriously. 193. Of course, they are right sometimes, and that is what makes them dangerous. Each of them, after being in the prophecy business for a few years, can point proudly to a few guesses that turned out right. Amazing! Everybody says. What never appears in the prophet's publicity is a reminder of all the time. 194. Economists, market advisors, political oracles, and clairvoyants all know this basic rule by heart: if you can't forecast right, forecast often. 195. As for you and me, lone speculators trying to make a buck, we are well advised to ignore the whole ballet. 196. They all forecast often and hope nobody scrutinizes the results too carefully. 197. Nostradamus wasn't often right, but he sure was often. 198. It is easy to get dazzled by a successful prophet, for there is a hypnotic allure in the supposed ability to look into the future. This is especially true in the world of money. 199. They, like Granville, were convinced the plunge was coming. 200. Every prophet is right sometimes and wrong sometimes, more often the latter, but you can't tell in advance which it is going to be. 201. Luck was in control of the outcome all the time. That being so, one can ask what was the sense of listening to the prophet in the first place. 202. It may seem unfair to pillory Rogers and other oracles on the basis of hindsight. 203. The conclusion is that it isn't very good. You cannot profit by listening to a prophet. 204. But the Zurich axioms are about the world of money, and that is a world of human events. Human events absolutely cannot be predicted, by any method, by anybody. 205. The fact is, of course, that all money phenomena are manifestations of human behavior. 206. The stock market, for example, is a colossal engine of human emotion. 207. The market doesn't slump because a computer somewhere determines selling pressure is on the rise, but because people are worried, or discouraged, or afraid. Or simply because a 4-day weekend is coming and all the buyers are off for the seashore. 208. All are caused by people. And as such, all are entirely unpredictable. 209. As the axiom says, human behavior cannot be predicted. Since all money world forecasts are about human behavior, you should not take any of them seriously. 210. Every forecast has the possibility of unforeseeable events ahead of it. No forecast about human behavior can ever be compounded of 100% foreseeable events. Every prediction is chancy. None can ever be trusted. 211. As we noted earlier, economists had predicted that interest rates would rise at the beginning of that decade and then level out or taper off. 212. The fourth axiom tells you not to build your speculative program on a basis of forecasts, because it won't work. 213. Design your speculative program on the basis of quick reactions to events that you can actually see developing in the present. 214. Never lose sight of the possibility that you have made a bad bet. 215. The fifth major axiom, on patterns: chaos is not dangerous until it begins to look orderly. 216. Poor old Fisher. Fate let him ride high for a while, so he would have farther to fall. For a few years, his illusion of order seemed to be justified by the facts. See, he would say, it is as determined. The stock market is behaving just the way I calculated it would. 217. He and a lot of other misguided investors went tumbling down the drain. 218. Everybody is looking for this formula. Unfortunately, there isn't one. 219. The truth is that the world of money is a world of patternless disorder, utter chaos. Patterns seem to appear in it from time to time, as do patterns in a cloudy sky or in the froth at the edge of the ocean. But they are ephemeral. 220. Some of the grandest illusions of order crop up in the world of art. 221. Wall Street mutual funds tell the same story. They illustrate with stark clarity how futile it is to seek patterns amid the chaos, and in the end, particularly for the average small-time plunger, how dangerous. 222. The sad fact is that mutual fund managers are like all other speculators, they win some and they lose some. 223. Fund managers continue searching doggedly for that magic formula, however. They search because they are paid to, and also, in many cases or most, because they genuinely believe there is a formula out there somewhere, if only they and the computers are smart enough to spot it. 224. You and I know, of course, that the reason why they can't find the formula is that there isn't one. 225. If you want to speculate in fund units, you are only dealing with the same kind of chaos you would encounter when speculating directly in stocks, art, commodities, currencies, precious metals, real estate, antiques, or poker hands. 226. And keep them about you whenever you read or hear investment advice. Most advisors have some kind of orderly illusion to sell, for that is what sells. 227. But you should regard all financial advisors with skepticism, and the more cool and bankerish they seem, the more you should distrust them. 228. An untutored loan plunger might diddle and fiddle and make a hash of a portfolio, but not a bank. A bank had to have formulas locked up in its vaults. A bank would always know what to do. 229. The lesson is that you should be wary of any advisor who, looking around at the investment scene, claims to see anything but chaos. The more orderly it looks to the advisor, the less does this man or woman merit your trust. 230. Don't let yourself nod off. You could wake up and find your money going down the drain. 231. Are these advisors telling the truth? Well, yes, the truth as they interpret it. 232. He believes he got rich because he found a winning formula. We know better. He got rich because he was lucky. 233. The axioms not only acknowledge it but are built on the basic assumption that luck is the most powerful single factor in speculative success or failure. 234. Well, you can follow them if you like, perhaps to your doom. For a formula that worked last year isn't necessarily going to work this year, with a different set of financial circumstances stewing in the pot. 235. Both these sages cannot be right. In fact, neither is. The truth is that the price of a stock, or anything else you buy in hope of making a profit, will rise if you are lucky. 236. Minor axiom 5. Beware the historian's trap. 237. But when your money is involved, the historian's trap is dangerous, for it can wipe you out. 238. She was attracted to currency trading, having first learned about it in her bank job. This is a game of high risk but, when you win, commensurately high reward. The basis of the game is the fluid way in which the world's many currencies fluctuate in value against one another. 239. Most small-time currency speculators play with just a few currencies, often only two. 240. Such a study can be useful in any investment situation, as long as you conduct the study without making the underlying assumption that history is going to repeat itself. Unfortunately, the young woman made just that assumption. 241. She proposed to wait until the indicators gave the historical signal, and then she would plunge into the game. 242. But she was seeing the world upside down. Formulas can be wrong, but markets never are. The market does what it does. It makes no predictions and offers no promises. It just is. Arguing with it is like standing in a blizzard and howling that it wasn't supposed to arrive until tomorrow. 243. Minor axiom 6. beware the chartist's illusion. 244. They believe that the future price of a stock, or a currency, a precious metal, or anything else for which frequent market price data are published, can be ascertained by charting price movements of the past. 245. The problem, he insists, is that he hasn't been astute enough. He knows the market can be predicted by charting, if only he can figure out what patterns to look for. 246. He can't make himself believe the simplest of all possible explanations, that the stock market has no patterns. It almost never repeats itself and never does so in a reliably predictable way. 247. The danger is not just that you can be conned by others, but that you can hoodwink yourself. You look at a chart depicting the value of the lira against the dollar in recent years, for instance. 248. In such ways do people allow themselves to be deluded by charts. A chart line always has a comfortingly orderly look, even when what it depicts is chaos. 249. Minor axiom 7. Beware the correlation and causality delusions. 250. It is characteristic of even the most rational minds to perceive links of cause and effect where none exist. When we have to, we invent them. 251. These events were random and unpredictable. The fact that those opposite price moves had occurred a few times in the past was no indication, and should never have been taken as an indication, that they would recur in the future. 252. Before I understood what was happening and abandoned my illusion of order, I had lost about 25% of my investment. 253. As the axiom says, chaos is not dangerous until it begins to look orderly. 254. It began by chance and one day will end by chance. No predictions can be made about it one way or the other. It is, in fact, only another part of the chaos. 255. Minor axiom 8. Beware the gambler's fallacy. 256. The gambler's fallacy is a peculiar variety of orderly illusion. In this case, the perceived order is not in the chaotic work all around, but inside, in the self. 257. Like many of these illusions, the gambler's fallacy has a lot of appeal. It seems true. In its cockeyed way, it has a rational sound. 258. They and others like them were cited in the 19th century and are still cited today in support of the gambler's fallacy. You see, there are times when people get hot. A believer will say, "These stories prove it, all you have to do is wait till you're hot, then play like mad." 259. Countless speculators and gamblers have been bankrupted by failing to quit while they were ahead. 260. That is a dangerous feeling to have. Nobody is invincible, not even for half a second. 261. The axiom warns you not to see order where order does not exist. This doesn't mean you should despair of ever finding an advantageous bet or a promising investment. 262. It is unlikely that your studying has created a sure thing for you, or even a nearly sure thing. You are still dealing with chaos. As long as you remain keenly alert to that fact, you can keep yourself from getting hurt. 263. Okay, I've done my homework as well as I know how. I think this bet can pay off for me. But since I cannot see or control all the random events that will affect what happens to my money, I know that the chance of my being wrong is large. Therefore, I will stay light on my feet, ready to jump this way. 264. The sixth major axiom, on mobility: avoid putting down roots. They impede motion. 265. But you should approach this roots business warily. If you let it impinge on your financial life, it can cost you a lot of money. The more earnestly you seek that feeling of being surrounded by the old, the familiar, and the comfortable, the less successful you are likely to be as a speculator. 266. Minor axiom 9. Do not become trapped in a souring venture because of sentiments like loyalty and nostalgia. 267. There are times when you have to choose between roots and money. If you are interested in money, which is presumably why you are studying speculation, it is a mistake to let yourself get too attached to any physical thing in which your capital is invested. Get attached to people, but not to houses. 268. He talked happily of some recent stock market successes. He had made some money by selling stocks short in a falling market. He was obviously familiar with the technique of shorting, in which you sell a stock before you own it, hoping the price will fall. If it does fall, you fulfill the sale by buying. 269. Minor axiom 10. Never hesitate to abandon a venture if something more attractive comes into view. 270. You've got to decide whether you are a speculator or not. Never get attached to things, only to people. 271. But think. If you have a good reason to believe a faster payoff is possible in hey wow, why not make the switch? It's the same money no matter where it's invested. 272. Never get rooted in an investment because of the feeling that it owes you something, or, just as bad, the feeling that you owe it. 273. Enough time to show what it can do. If it isn't going anywhere and you see something better, change trains. 274. This is the question you should ask yourself whenever you are holding one investment but are attracted to another. Don't get rooted. 275. It says you must stay footloose, ready to jump away from trouble or seize opportunities quickly. 276. But when a venture is clearly souring, or when something clearly more promising comes into view, then you must sever those roots and go. 277. The seventh major axiom, on intuition: a hunch can be trusted if it can be explained. 278. A hunch is a piece of feeling stuff. It is a mysterious little clump of not quite knowledge, a mental event that feels something like knowledge but doesn't feel perfectly trustworthy. 279. Many investors/speculators studiously ignore their own hunches and laugh at other people's. They insist on backing all speculative moves with facts and fact-like material. 280. They will often make a move even when their intuition is telling them strongly that the move is wrong. The chart says it's right, and that's what I go by. 281. I go with my hunches, these people will say proudly, neglecting to add that those wonderful hunches have quite often led to speculative calamities. 282. A hunch is a perfectly ordinary mental event. When you are hit with a strong hunch, I think that company is in worse trouble than they're letting on. The possibility is that this conclusion is based on actual, solid information that is stored somewhere in your mind. 283. A University of Chicago psychologist who has spent years studying this subject points out that it is a common human experience to know something without knowing how you know it. 284. The information is in your head somewhere, but you don't know just what it is or where it is. 285. This is the stuff hunches are made of. A good hunch is something that you know, but you don't know how you know it. 286. But she was afraid to trust the hunch. She was perplexed by the usual problem: she couldn't see the library of information on which the hunch was based. 287. We are now in a position to understand what the seventh axiom means when it says, a hunch can be trusted if it can be explained. 288. The new man is going to take Hu Boy to magnificent new heights. He'll gobble up the market. He'll send IBM reeling. The stock price will soar like a rocket. 289. The reporter probably never heard of him before either. Probably half the stuff in that article came right out of a company press release. So you really think you've got enough of a database to generate a reliable hunch? 290. Whatever you do, however, keep the rest of the axioms about you. No matter how good a hunch feels, don't let it lull you into a state of overconfidence. Stay worried. Intuition can be a useful speculative tool, but it isn't the long-sought, infallible formula for 100% correct money decisions. 291. Minor axiom 11. Never confuse a hunch with a hope. 292. My personal rule is to be highly skeptical anytime I have a hunch that something I want to happen will happen. This doesn't mean all such hunches are wrong. It means only that one should examine them with extra care and double one's guard in case of trouble. 293. Though intuition is not infallible, it can be a useful speculative tool if handled with care and skepticism. There is nothing magical or otherworldly about intuition. It is simply a manifestation of a perfectly ordinary mental experience, that of knowing something without knowing how one knows it. 294. Be especially wary of any intuitive flash that seems to promise some outcome you want badly. 295. The eighth major axiom, on religion and the occult. It is unlikely that God's plan for the universe includes making you rich. 296. Frank Henry said he was happy to hear this good news. He added that it sounded as though it might be a little too good to be true. In his experience, he said, instant killings and sure things usually turned out to be traps. Amateur speculators were always falling into them and crawling back out with. 297. If there is a God, a question on which the axioms hold no opinion, there is no evidence that this supreme being gives a hoot whether you die rich or poor. 298. And Abraham Lincoln remarked once that God must have had a special love for the poor, since he made so many of them. 299. No matter what your beliefs might be, thoughts of God or other supernatural help should play no part in your speculative behavior. 300. Priests, ministers, and rabbis are always telling people they shouldn't pray for money, but many do. 301. Don't count on it. God may do much for you, but one thing He plainly isn't concerned about is the size of your bank account. That's your problem. Yours alone. 302. He traveled with a herd of flunkies and sycophants. He could hardly walk a block in New York without being buttonholed by somebody who wanted investment advice. 303. None of this means you are in danger of coming to Jesse Livermore's tragic end. The Livermore story is only an unusually bizarre illustration of the way in which occult beliefs can get in the way of sound speculative thinking. Leaning on such beliefs may not be hazardous to your health, but it is too. 304. Minor axiom 12. If astrology worked, all astrologers would be rich. 305. Look around at the practitioners of this doctrine, and particularly at those who profess to be its teachers, priests, and gurus, and ask one question: are they rich? 306. No matter what this occult doctrine might do for you in terms of inner peace and all that, one thing it won't do is fatten your bank account. 307. This is often a cop-out, but when it is genuinely meant, it is to their credit. 308. But hold tight to your skepticism and your money. The stories you will hear are all like Jesse Livermore's amazing adventure with Union Pacific. They don't prove that the given mystical approach is a great moneymaker. 309. If astrology worked, the minor axiom says, all astrologers would be rich. And so it is with tarot devotees. Anybody can have a lucky hit or two, but the true test of any touted money-making approach is whether it works consistently. 310. Minor axiom 13. A superstition need not be exorcised. It can be enjoyed, provided it is kept in its place. 311. Just for fun, however, he bet on 283 in the lottery that day, and lo and behold, won $500. 312. It says, essentially, that money and the supernatural are an explosive mixture that can blow up in your face. Keep the two worlds apart. 313. To expect help from God or from occult or psychic powers is not just useless, but also dangerous. 314. In handling your money, assume you are entirely on your own. Lean on nothing but your own good wits. 315. The ninth major axiom, on optimism and pessimism. Optimism means expecting the best, but confidence means knowing how you will handle the worst. Never make a move if you are merely optimistic. 3:16. But you had better be very careful about the role optimism plays in your personal financial life. 3:17. But be extremely wary of optimism as it applies to specific money ventures. It can be a dangerous state of mind. 3:18. Professional gamblers know this. It is one of their most effective tools for emptying the pockets of amateurs. 3:19. The amateur beats the odds just often enough to keep that crazy optimism alive. And so he keeps investing his money in losing hands. You can beat the odds once in a while, but not consistently. 3:20. The pro doesn't have optimism. What he has is confidence. Confidence springs from the constructive use of pessimism. 3:21. In poker and a lot of other speculative worlds, things nearly always are as bad as they seem. A lot of times, they're worse. They are worse at least as often as they are better. 3:22. The safest course, almost always, is to assume that if a situation looks bad, it is. 3:23. Confidence comes not from expecting the best, but from knowing how you will handle the worst. 3:24. There is nothing wrong with taking a risk, of course. To bet one's money on a venture whose outcome cannot be foreseen, this is the basis of all speculation. As we've learned in studying other axioms, just about all ventures have unforeseeable outcomes. There are no reliable patterns in human affairs. 3:25. But Sam and Judy made one fundamental mistake. They weren't pessimistic enough. They didn't ask how they would save themselves if the cards fell against them. 3:26. There is always going to be somebody to sell to, for there is always somebody making a market in IBM shares. Walking into the venture, you can mark the exit, I'll get out if the price drops to such and such. Knowing how you will handle the worst, that is confidence. 3:27. One reason why optimism is so treacherous is that it feels good. It feels much better than pessimism. 3:28. Perhaps life would be impossible without optimism. Speculation would be impossible too. The very act of betting money is a species of optimistic statement about an unknowable outcome. This is the paradox of it. Optimism, which feels so good and may even be necessary, can lead to financial doom if allowed. 3:29. By my own informal count over a period of years, at least 3/4 of the market readings reported in these columns are optimistic. 3:30. First, bulls do, in fact, outnumber bears, by a very big margin. The reason for this is, of course, that optimism feels better than pessimism. 3:31. Second, financial journalists don't usually seek equal bull-bear representation in any case. Why not? Because they prefer interviewing bulls. The song is sweeter. 3:32. The journalists keep going back to him because he is such a die-hard optimist. The fact that he is usually wrong doesn't seem to upset anybody or diminish his appeal. 3:33. We are drawn to optimism and optimists. They plainly don't know any more about the future than pessimists do, nor can we ever assume, in choosing between the two, that the optimists are objectively more worth listening to. Yet, as you will learn if you haven't already, it is the optimists to whom you. 3:34. Watch out for them all. They can befuddle your good judgment to an alarming degree. 3:35. What you can do is to stay aware of the optimistic bias in your internal compass and stay alert to its dangers. When you're feeling optimistic, try to judge whether that good feeling is really justified by the facts. At least half the time, it won't be. 3:36. The axiom says you should never make a move if you are merely optimistic. Before committing your money to a venture, ask how you will save yourself if things go wrong. 3:37. the 10th major axiom, on consensus disregard the majority opinion. It is probably wrong. 338. The trick, he said over and over again in any number of contexts, is to disregard what everybody tells you until you have thought it through for yourself. He doubted the truths alleged by self-styled experts, and he refused even to accept majority opinions. 339. In our democratic age, on our democratic side of the world, we tend often to accept majority opinions too uncritically. If a lot of people say something is so, why, all right, it's so. 340. The majority of people believe the ancient clichés to be unarguable truths. In the light of this, it may be instructive to note that the majority of people aren't rich. 341. Minor axiom 14. Never follow speculative fads. Often, the best time to buy something is when nobody else wants it. 342. Take the stock market as an example. When is the best time to buy a stock? When the price is low, of course. And when is the best time to sell it? Why? When the price is high, naturally. Kids learn this in 7th grade economics, and even if nobody ever taught it to them, they would figure it out. 343. The time to buy is precisely when the majority of people are saying, don't. 344. The industry's troubles had been shorter-lived than most people had thought possible. The speculators who made money out of the situation were those who disregarded what everybody else was saying and thought things through for themselves. 345. Majorities are always dissuading them from carrying out good moves. 346. Against the evidence lying plainly in view, he or she would squirm, fidget, sigh, and finally say yes, okay, I guess the rest of you are right, those pencils are all the same length. 347. As far as I know, there is no mental muscle building course that can strengthen your ability to withstand majority pressure. 348. Probably the best defense against majority pressure is the simple awareness of its existence and coercive power. Novice speculators often seem to lack this awareness. 349. In your effort to resist the pressure of the herd, you will also be up against sales pressure from brokers and others who stand to profit from your speculative moves. 350. If you are an active speculator, you are always going to be bombarded with ads, sales talks, and other blandishments to buy whatever the majority is buying. 351. Still, like anybody selling anything, they must pay attention to what the public wants. 352. The public almost always wants gold during recessions, for example. The yellow metal is felt to be a lockbox of value in times when national economies, currencies, stock markets, and other money structures are developing cracks and springing leaks. 353. None of this means you should always automatically do what the majority isn't doing. It means only that you should stubbornly resist majority pressure instead of just drifting along with it. 354. The point is, whatever you do, whether you bet with the herd or against, think it through independently first. 355. There are speculators who make a dogma out of betting automatically against the majority. They call themselves contrary thinkers or contrarians. Their philosophy is derived from the paradox we've been looking at, that often the best time to buy something is the time when it seems the least attractive. 356. The herd isn't always wrong. 357. Figure everything out for yourself before putting your money at risk. 358. The 11th major axiom, on stubbornness: if it doesn't pay off the first time, forget it. 359. For ordinary men and women like you and me, struggling to make a buck, it is advice that should be heeded selectively. 360. In speculation, however, while there are times when it can be useful, there are also times when it can lead you to your financial doom. 361. The share prices of big retailers, including Sears, nose-dived. 362. She chased Sears, as speculators call this kind of behavior, chased it over the tops of bull markets and down into the depths of bear markets, nearly always losing money because this obsession clouded her judgment and fogged her vision. 363. Is that any way to run a speculative program? No, but it is typical of new speculators. Even more seasoned speculators will sometimes chase an investment out of sheer cussedness. 364. You lose some money on Sears stock, let's say. Of course you want to gain the money back. But why does the gain have to come from Sears? 365. The reasons for persevering are emotional and not easy to sort out. The thoughts about owing come from personification of the speculative entity, as we've noted. This investment took money from me, and by God, I'm going to haunt it until it pays me back. Mixed with this are vague feelings about vengeance. 366. All these emotional responses, seething and bubbling together, produce a state of mind in which the speculator's thinking goes haywire. 367. Somehow or other, you must defeat the wish to persevere when perseverance will lead you astray. 368. If at first you don't succeed, the hell with it. 369. Minor axiom 15. Never try to save a bad investment by averaging down. 370. The technique known as averaging down or averaging losses is one of the investment world's most alluring traps. 371. Throwing in new money, you can make the old money look smarter. Not exactly. All you do when you average down is to fool yourself. 372. But be very sure this isn't just wishful thinking. If you are hunting bargains, the stock market and all other speculative worlds are always full of them. 373. Rid yourself of the who-boy obsession and you vastly widen your field of choices and improve the chances of getting the gain you seek. 374. If he bought something and the price fell, he would buy more and average down his cost. The lower the price went, the more he would buy and the lower his average cost would fall and the happier he would become. This was one fancy psychological trick, but it kept him content. It didn't make him rich. 375. Certainly you can persevere in your general effort to learn, improve, and grow rich. But don't fall into the trap of persevering in an attempt to squeeze a gain out of any single speculative entity. 376. Value the freedom to choose investments on their merits alone. 377. The 12th major axiom on planning long-range plans engender the dangerous belief that the future is under control. It is important never to take your own long-range plans, or other people's, seriously. 378. They were going to buy it with spot cash so that they would have no monthly mortgage payments to worry about. 379. In the 1960s, George's employer got tangled into a messy dispute involving falsified corporate financial records, and the CA firm turned belly up. 380. Two things happened: planning, followed by the unexpected. 381. As the axiom says, long-range plans engender a belief that the future is under control. This is a hair-raisingly dangerous belief. 382. It is ridiculous to think you can see the world's future simply by looking at trends in evidence today. 383. That being so, don't try to make long-range plans or allow other people to make them for you. 384. When you see opportunities, go for them. When you see danger, jump out of the way. 385. The only long-range plan you need, as far as money is concerned, is an intention to get rich. Exactly how you will accomplish that purpose is something you cannot know except in the most general way. 386. Don't let a plan immobilize you. Don't get stuck, don't get rooted like the ant, a potential victim for fate's bulldozer. 387. Minor axiom 16. Shun long-term investments. 388. He told me the sad story of a long-term investor named Paula W., who got herself bulldozed pretty thoroughly. 389. If Paula was interested mainly in income, why didn't she consider buying shares of a big utility? Utility companies traditionally pay out a big percentage of their income in cash dividends. 390. As we noted before in another context, the auto industry's troubles were deepening in 1980, and all the big carmakers' stocks were plunging in price, including Ford's. Paula should have been out of it long before, but she was rooted. 391. From my viewpoint, the long-term investors are the big gamblers. They make a bet, stay with it, and if it goes wrong, they can lose it all. The intelligent speculator will, by acting promptly, hold his losses to a minimum. 392. Betting on a day 20 or 30 years in the future is absolutely crazy. 393. Long-term investment, like so many of the fallacious procedures we've looked at, does have its charms. 394. You make just one decision, I'll buy this and sit on it, and then relax. 395. Still another charm of many long-term investments is that they save on brokerage commissions. 396. Still, many long-term investors use the commissions and fees question as a rationalization. 397. Your broker or dealer would prefer that you be a light-on-the-feet, fast-moving kind of speculator rather than a long-term sitter. The more moves you make, the more money the broker/dealer makes. In this particular case, his financial interests coincide perfectly with your own. 398. Don't get rooted. Every investment should be, at the very least, re-evaluated and made to justify itself afresh every 3 months or so. 399. But if circumstances have changed since you first got into this investment, if it is sagging, if that ending position seems to be receding instead of getting closer, if you see another opportunity that looks clearly more promising to you in the light of the changed conditions, then make a move. 400. Then there is the life insurance industry. This is a world of appalling complexity. To boil it down to its essentials, however, we can say there are 2 main kinds of life insurance, those that root you in a long-term investment and those that don't. My advice, shun the former. 401. Meantime your family will be protected in case you turn up your toes sooner than planned. Wonderful, no? 402. All you can know about the future is that it will get here when it gets here. You cannot see its shape, but at least you can prepare yourself to react to its opportunities and hazards. There is no sense in just standing there and letting it roll over you. 403. Do not get rooted in long-range plans or long-term investments. Instead, react to events as they unfold in the present. Put your money into ventures as they present themselves and withdraw it from hazards as they loom up. Value the freedom of movement that will allow you to do this. Don't ever sign that. 404. The 12th axiom says there is only one long-range financial plan you need, and that is the intention to get rich. The how is not knowable or plannable. All you need to know is that you will do it somehow.